Okay, so a very good evening to all. Hope you're safe out there. Um, so we'll continue with where we have left yesterday. Actually, I'm still stumbling upon enabling the Maven flow correctly because of the newer version of STS which I'm using in my Mac operating system. But still, I've made up things a bit okay so that we can see some sort of Maven based demo today. But you have to follow a bit of uh, uh, the similarity in your system as well. Probably if you have Windows system, I guess you will not face much of trouble out there in order to create a Maven application. Okay, so before we get into it, not get the session link in mail. Okay, I guess I've shared the mail. Just a second. Did you people received in spam?
No, sir, direct inbox we got.
Okay. Okay, just a second. I guess one page got stuck. I have to go to. Just a second. I'm sorry for this. Okay. So if in case you haven't checked your mail, please do check it quickly because during the session it will be a little hassles for us. Okay, there is a double copy of it. Okay. Did anyone received a couple of mail of the same request?
That joining mail, class mail, sir?
Yeah, the invite mail.
No, sir. Only one time I got.
Guess I've shared this. I don't know. Okay. You will be receiving a mail because I've sent the updated invite again, so you can exclude that. Okay, so yesterday we saw basics of why we have to look out for a Spring framework when we already have the better Java-based applications. Spring is a framework, as we discussed, and we saw a lot of uh, understanding of using the particular Spring framework. The first thing that we were talking about was on Spring Core, right? So in the understanding of that, let's have some better application format to be created. As I said, we will be seeing the XML based configurations today as a initial understanding, and then we'll move on with the Java based configuration as well. So let's quickly go ahead and create a new project. I'm creating another new project right away here. Okay, so that it's going to be a Maven based project right now.
So we can do this in Eclipse also.
Yeah, of course you can do it in Eclipse. Not necessary that you have to use Spring Tool Suite, but Spring Tool Suite has some additional plugins relevant to the Spring framework for development ease that you can also separately download it from the marketplace of your Eclipse. We have a Spring Tool plugin. So here, right now, I'm just creating a Maven project. You would have noticed that. So right-click, new, other, Maven project. Hit next. And so here you can specify your workspace where you want to refer your project as. So I'm just using a default workspace. So the default workspace is not highlighted here. It is the workspace from where this particular ID is launched. Okay, so we are going to make use of that default workspace and hit next. The important part here is you have to understand that there is an archetype that we have in Maven. Okay, so you can see there's something called quick start. Okay, so this is the one which we are going to use.
Sir?
Yes.
Can you zoom out a little bit?
Zoom out.
Yeah, maximize this font. Will you be able to maximize
No,
this font?
yeah,
Okay.
no, the dialog boxes we cannot maximize, but you can go for a full screen mode.
Okay.
Hope the screen is visible here. So on the three dot you have, right? On the
Yeah.
top, and there you will have an option to focus and full screen.
Okay.
Probably you can just try that if you're able to
Okay.
view the screen. How about others? Is that okay? Because I don't have any other option to zoom these things unless and until we get into the code.
Yeah, now it's okay, sir.
Yeah, fine. So yeah, so as I was talking about, we have this quick start. Okay, the quick start will help us in setting up a base template for a Java project, and this is going to be a core Java project. Okay, you're going to use it for a core Java project. If it's for a web-based project, we'll be going and using Maven archetype web app. But right now we are not going to use the web app. The reason is it's not a web-based application, but instead we are going to use only the quick start. The quick start is going to help us in developing a core application, core Java application. So the core Java template, project template will get created. Okay, most of you might be aware of it, but if you're new to it, probably you can just have a look at it. I didn't do anything. You just start a Maven application and then you can you can just refer the default workspace and hit next and choose your Maven archetype quick start. Okay, please make a note of it that you are supposed to use this catalog. Okay, just try with the catalog of this internal. Okay, you have this internal option in the catalog, right? So that you can use it in order to list out these list of archetypes. Okay, technically speaking, uh, uh, the IDE will automatically recognize the Maven and it will pull all the essential archetypes that you can make use of it. Because if you see here, there are all catalogs are there. Okay, which where you might be seeing nothing at times if in case it's not properly been configured. But right now I'm just choosing the internal part. So this will help us in listing out the limited number of archetypes so that you can choose the archetype quickly. If you go for all, okay, it'll list all the catalogs. So searching them is slightly difficult. So that's why you go for the choice of internal, and then you will get this Maven archetype quick start. You can hit next. And the important thing is there are three major labels that you need to look forward. So the one is group ID. Okay, another one is artifact ID and the package name. Okay, so group ID and the package name would look like similar, and the artifact ID, okay, the artifact ID is going to be the representation of your project name. So we are going to set a project name, right? So that project name will be given via this artifact ID. Okay, so now let's go ahead and provide all those informations. So this time I'm just going to use the inventory application. So com.inventory. Okay. It's just a basic application, not too complex. Now you can notice that the artifact ID also gets appended along with your package name that has been auto-directed. The package name is automatically coming here. It's because we have mentioned that group ID name, similar group ID name will be taken for the package. But if in case if you want to give a different package name, yes, of course, you can go ahead and do it. So let's say I'm going to give it as org.inventory. So org.inventory is the representation of the package name, and the artifact ID is the project name, and the group ID is the reference for the whole project. Okay. So this is how a Maven configuration, a Maven project configuration should be, right? So please make a note of it that these are the basic steps. So just you can go ahead and hit finish. This will help us in creating a Maven project. So right now you can see that there is a inventory service project is there, and it's still building. You can see a lot of thing happens out here. Now the important thing that you have to notice here is we have this package name. Here you can see that there is a package name, right? And yesterday we had a simplified template, right? It's just about the source. I created a resources directory, and that's all we had. But this time you have many things. You have the library reference, and there is something called Maven Dependency. Okay, this Maven Dependency is the place where the Maven will manage all the jars. Yesterday we did it manually, right? We manually loaded the jars. But this time it's going to be there available in the Maven Dependencies section itself. And one thing that you have to notice here is the Java version that's currently used here is 1.5. But actually what I have in my 14. So we have to ensure that this is getting changed to the 14 version. Even in your system, you can just have a look at it. If it's referring to 1.5, please try to change it to the version that you have in your mission. Then you also have other directory structures. This is almost similar to the directory structure that we have out here. So the package name is there. So if you expand the package name, you will have a default default class. Okay, so app. Whether you want to use this default main class or not, it's up to you. If you want to drop them, you can drop it, and you can have your own creation of the main class as well. Then, so the first thing that you have to see here is we have a pom.xml file. The Pom file is your configuration file for Maven. Okay, Pom file is going to be called as a configuration file. Very important file. Configuration file. Okay, it's a configuration file, and you will configure all your dependencies here. Yesterday we saw that. So all your dependencies will come into this pom.xml. You have a dependencies tab, and you have a dependency hierarchy tab, where in the dependency hierarchy tab you can actually explore the transitive dependencies. Transitive dependencies. Okay, it's called as the transitive dependencies. I'll tell you what is the transitive dependencies more clearly. So during the interview, okay, you have to throw these kind of a jargons that shows the richness of the knowledge that you have. Okay, I usually ask and expect such kind of a jargons. So you should speak more technically. Okay, during the interview, it's not just about responding. You should throw your your knowledge by using all these jargons. How to remember that? That's a big question. What I would suggest is you can make a note of all the important technical jargons, and before the day of an interview, you can just refresh them, or before an hour of time or 2 hours of time before the interview, you can just refresh them. You can recall all the learnings and then be ready. So while you are in front of the interviewer, you should present yourself that you are technically sound and you are aware of all those technicalities in detail. Okay, so that's something very important, and that's how you impress the interviewer. Okay, so it's obvious that even if you sit in the place of an interviewer, you expect the same. Okay, so you should think in that perspective, and you try to represent yourself that you have a strong skills on this by giving all these jargons, not specifically to Maven. If the question they ask about Maven or something like that, you try to throw those technical jargons and try to make them understand what it means and so on. Okay, so mostly this transitive dependencies we will see shortly. It's pretty easier to understand what it means, but in the dependencies section, okay, you have the option to add all your dependencies. So here you will have the option to search for the dependencies, but right now you can notice that I don't have the option to search for the dependency. The reason I'm unable to search for the dependency is because I have the problem in the Maven yet, which is still not yet resolved. So from the morning, I'm just breaking up my head. So actually what happens is, in your mission, if in case you have the Maven already set up, you have a window menu, right? In your system, you'll be having a window menu. In the window menu, you can just go to show view, window, show view, and other. Window, show view, and other, and search for Maven. So when you search out for Maven, you will get Maven repositories option under the Maven tag. So you can choose that Maven repositories option and click open. I repeat again, it's window, show view, other, and search for Maven. You'll get Maven repositories option, and you click open. You will get the Maven repositories window like this, a tab, a window, where you will see a local repository and global repository. You can expand the local repository, and in the local repository, you will find the path where the repository is maintained or managed. Okay, it will be technically in the .2 directory of your users directory in the system, and repository directory will be there. And this you need to right click. You just expand it and see. Probably you will not find any directories initially, but if in case it's already there, it's fine. You can right click and you can go ahead and do a step called rebuild index, which I'm not doing it right now because I have a trouble when I do this rebuild index, everything goes off. So all the loaded libraries are going off from the workspace. So I'm not going to do this. This is the main challenge that I have right now. But in your mission, of course, you can try to do this. If it's a Windows mission, I guess you will have the option to work with this rebuild index. And once you take a rebuild index option on your progress bar window, okay, it will keep downloading all the essential dependencies that are already available in the local repository. It will start capturing. You will see some progressing happens on the progress bar. Okay, this is a very important step when you launch any new IDE of Eclipse version. The very first thing is, if you want to work with the Maven closely, you have to do the steps promptly. Okay, window, show view, other, and search for Maven, and you will get the Maven repositories tab. Go for the local repository, expand the local repository, and it is local repositories, right? So means it can have multiple local repositories declarations. So you'll have local repository here, and here you can right click and do a rebuild index, and it will take some time to complete its rebuild index option. Hope this is clear, right? Once that is done, then if you have already done with creation of your Maven project, you can come to the dependencies and click add, and you can start searching for the libraries. Okay, technically I'm not getting it, so it will be like this. So you can see a default Maven jars are listed when I search out, but I don't get it for this Maven because I'm not doing the rebuild index. If I do the rebuild index, I'm losing my references from the local workspace. So that's why I'm not doing it. Anyways, these are the steps that you're supposed to follow. So what exactly happens is, when you search for the Spring, you will get the Spring jars here. You can choose a Spring jar, or let's say Spring-context. So when you say spring-context, you will get the spring-context listed out here, but you won't get it. For the very first time, you need to load them. Okay, for the very first time, you need to load them. Initially, if it's a new system having a new, if it's a system which has a new Maven repository, technically you don't have anything in that repository. It's empty, right? So you need to download from the Maven repo, the global repo, which you have to do. So how do we do that? That's which I'm going to explain. So let's go back to our Maven repository once. So yeah. Yeah, Joshua, do you have any question?
Yeah. Actually.
Yes. Hello. Hello. Hello, Joshua, you're there? I guess you went on to mute again.
Actually, I try to do that preference and show view with Maven local repository. It will shows that org.error, some error it came.
What you saw? Which one you are talking about?
Repository error. Repository. It is showing that it is not. I means that Maven repository it in C drive, but my project is in E drive. How to?
No. Which step you have an error here? In which step you are facing the error?
After clicking, giving the artifact and group ID, when I click the finish, it will showing that error.
No, that's what. Okay. No, actually, I have done one mistake. So probably before you create the project, you have to do the one which I explained right now. Have you done that?
Yeah, I did that. That local repository one.
Yeah,
rebuild index. Rebuild index. Yeah.
So post rebuild index, are you able to see these list of some directories?
List of directories.
You have to expand and see.
Okay.
If it's not there, then I guess you have to do a little bit of workaround in getting them back.
Yeah.
So only then. So see, guys, one thing that you have to keep in mind that when you're creating a Maven project, right? So when you do a Maven project, when you hit next, technically speaking, this catalog sections will be a trouble. Okay. In the internal, if you have the Maven archetype quick start and if you hit next, but still you will not have the option to get that archive. It will throw some error at the time of giving a hit next when you hit next. The reason is you might not have a proper configuration of the Maven done. Okay, that could be the reason for which that things are not working. So what you can do for that is you have to download your Maven, right? As I've already given the link for the softwares, you download it, make them set, and then you try to do a Maven clean install from the command prompt. Okay, so that is from the terminal, you can do that step. So from here, you can, once after the settings are done, you can just look out for the Maven version that you have in the mission. You have to use this command to check it, mvn space -version. And there you will get to know the version number. The latest Maven version is which I'm using right now. Okay. And then you can say Maven clean install. Right. By doing this, it will create a temporary repository in the .m2 directory of your mission. And post that, you will be able to see this folders that gets loaded up here. Okay, so this is something, a little bit of small steps that you have to invest in order to make your Maven application running properly.
Sir, shall we change the M2 path? Always it sit on the home path of our laptop, right? C:\user.
Yes,
Shall
it will
we
be in the
change?
C:\users. So what you have to do is, if in case you want to change them to some other location in D drive, you have a repository. If you want to map them, of course you can do that as well. So that you have to perform it in the preferences, window preferences. You can search out. I'm sorry, I'm on terminal. In your case, it will be window menu preferences.
Yeah, I'm doing, sir.
Yeah, there you will have a Maven. Search for Maven and just click the first the Maven tab and go to the user settings. So here you will have that XML file settings.xml, which is located in your default directory.
Yeah, yes.
You got to open that settings.xml file, and there you need to put the local repository as your D drive repository.
I need to edit in
Edit
that
the
setting.
settings.xml file. Yes.
Yeah.
So in my case, in my Mac system, if you see users, under the users directory, if I look out for the hidden directory, you can see the .m2 here, right?
Yeah, yes, sir.
So there we have this repository. Okay. By default, this will get created. But you can leave it to the default. You don't need to change it to D drive or so. If in case you want to change it to D drive, then you have to drop an settings.xml file. You need to create a settings.xml file. You can get the template from the Maven portal, and you need to copy paste that template, or in the Maven directory you will have it. That is in the installation file. You downloaded the Maven, right? The Maven downloaded installation folder will have the conf directory. Inside the conf directory, you will have a sample XML file. I'll just show you that if in case you want to know that. So in the documents, I have that just, yeah. So Apache Maven, just go and look out in the conf directory. You have a sample settings.xml, right? You can copy this XML and drop it in the .m2 directory, straight into the .m2 directory, not inside the repository. You have to copy paste here. After that, you open the XML file. By opening the XML file, what happens is you will find the option to edit the local repository. I'll just show you that. Actually, Maven needs a separate session actually, but anyways.
In one of the interview, I faced this question, sir. That's why I asked.
Yeah, of course, you will have the option to change that. So that's what I'm trying to explain.
Yeah.
So in the XML file, if you scroll down, it's all completely commented. Everything is commented here. Okay. So what you have to do here is, that's a little bit slow. So here in this XML file, you will have the option of changing your directory to somewhere, a D drive, some folder. It is a local repository tag will be there. And with that tag, you will have the option to change it. I'll try to show you once it is up.
Then I noted when I click the rebuild index, it will fetch all the repositories available from my local repository, right? That is the purpose. We right click on the local repository and click the rebuild index.
Yes, of course. So what exactly happens here is when you do the step of right click and rebuild index, you can see the address here, the location where your repository is mapped. Right. So in the XML, if you mention D drive, if you do the settings which I was referring here in the preferences, the Maven user settings, right? So in the XML, you will make a change to D drive summary directory inside that repository. That will be, you need to update. You have to click on update settings. The D drive will reflect here. Okay. So once the D drive is reflected here, you can apply and close and then come back and you can right click and you can click on rebuild index and automatically the change will happen and it will download all the repository which you have it in that directory. So that's how it is.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Yeah. So
Sir?
that's right. Yeah.
So when I click the rebuild index, you have mentioned like you have to run mv and clean install. After running that, I'm able to see those repository folders now.
Correct. Correct.
Yeah.
So that's what you will have
Okay.
that repository and see if you have any default org directory.
In which org, yeah, default
Yeah.
directory, yeah.
Inside the repository org directory and inside that org you should have Apache.
Apache, yes.
And you will have Maven.
Yes.
And there should be some plugins available there.
Yeah, archiver, artifact core.
Yeah, so that refers that it's downloaded all those relevant Maven dependencies as well.
Okay.
And apart from that org, you can also check from the com directory. Is that com? Just a second. Maven. Tomcat assert chain. Okay, let me show it here. See, this seems to be a little trivial, but actually this is a mandate step. So in the .m2 repository, and here you can see all the list of repositories. Com. Okay. Sorry. No, in the Apache you have yeah. Maven, and inside this you can see archetypes. Is there an archetype? Hello.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so you can check for the archetype and see if you are able to see a Maven archetype quick start. If this is not there, not an issue, but this Maven folder has these many things.
Yeah, right. Archetype, I couldn't able to figure out.
So not a problem. Is that archetypes is there, this folder? At least from the Maven directory.
No, sir.
Okay, so anyways, you can try creating the Maven project and see when you hit next, we are able to see this or not, because it will try to download the archetype from the Maven global repo.
Okay.
Okay, I got this is having some problem. So sometimes we have to spend some knowledge on learning all these stuffs. Okay, that seems to be a little important. Force quietus. Okay. Yeah. So. Okay, so this is the file. Hope the file is visible to you all. Everything is commented. Okay, if you keep scrolling down, you should notice this commented line. Okay, can you see this local repository, this part? This you have to copy and paste it outside the comment, and in the path you have to mention the D drive d drive:/summary/.m2/repository. Okay, so once you edit that and save this file, okay, you save this file. After saving the file, you can come back to your IDE, and as I said, you have to go to the preferences. In the window menu, you will have it. Search for the Maven user settings. That XML is changed right now. The local repository path is changed. So you have to click on update settings here. And once you hit the update, the D drive will get changed. And henceforth, whenever you do the rebuild index from the D drive repository only, it will pull all the references. So even if you add a new dependencies, it will go into the D drive's location instead of the default C drive user's location. So that's how it works. So you need to understand how a settings.xml is configured. That's something important.
Okay, sir.
Okay, so yeah, now you can see that this is how the Maven setup would look like. Seems to be a first-time learner. It's going to be a little complex, but try to do a little bit of research and then try to get yourself trained on using with Maven. It's not just about right clicking, creating a Maven project. That is not the only way of understanding a Maven. Okay, Maven has many other learnings as well. Okay, but at least essentially level 1 skills that you should acquire. Now, okay, now I've created a Maven project, right? So I can go straight into the pym.xml. And here you can see the dependencies. So as I said, we need to go ahead and get the Spring context dependency. I'm just looking at the Spring context. Spring context is one of the important dependency that we need to have, right? So I'm going to click on this 5.3.7, as I said, and you copy this and you drop it here. Okay. Okay, so now I'm just copying this. See, you have it for Gradle. Okay, you have it for Maven. If you are going to work on Gradle, you can copy the Gradle settings, the configurations. If it's for Maven, you look out for Maven. I'm right now looking out for Maven. Now you can see that I've dropped the dependency. Okay, you can save this file. By saving this, the Maven build will happen. Now, if I go to the dependencies, you will notice that the jar is available. But I've already downloaded and it's already there available in my repo. Okay, so that's why it was a little faster to get loaded into the dependencies section. But usually, if you are doing it for the very first time, okay, it will take some time because it has to go all the way around to your global repo, the Maven repository via the internet, and it has to download. But one thing that you have to notice, yesterday we captured almost 5 to 6 jars, I guess, right? Expression, Spring context, Spring core, Spring beans, right? JCL, right? All these are the libraries that we downloaded manually and we kept it into the project. But today, since it's a Maven project, I'm just looking forward only to the Spring context to get loaded. I'm instructing the Maven, hey Maven, please give me the Spring context. But Spring Context has other dependencies as well, sub dependencies. Okay, it depends on other dependencies as well, and those dependencies will be automatically downloaded, and it will be kept in the dependency hierarchy. If you go to the dependency hierarchy, you can see all dependencies, including the AOP. I forgot to say that AOP. So what I downloaded, or what I mentioned to the Spring, the Maven, is to download and refer Spring Context into my project. But what all got downloaded along with that is your Spring Core, Spring Beans, Spring Expression, AOP. If you look at the beans, okay, you have Spring Core. So Spring Beans will download Spring Core. If you look at the Spring Core, you have JCL. That was the topmost library that we saw yesterday. And you have Spring Expression, which also needs Spring Core. Spring AOP also needs Spring Beans and Spring Core. So these are all the transitive dependencies. So all those transitive dependencies, the child level dependencies, are all downloaded or all referred and managed by the Maven itself just by triggering the Spring-context jar file. So you can do the other way around also. You can go and search for core and you add it. You can search for beans and you add it. You search for AOP and you add it. It's up to you. Still, Maven will accept it. But instead of doing that way, you can just add the Spring-context, and automatically whatever the transitive dependencies are there for that particular Spring-context will all get added into your dependency hierarchy. That is a understanding. Is that clear? And that's why I call it as technically it is a transitive dependencies. Okay. So if you have any questions, please let me know. No questions?
So in this case, Spring Context provides all the dependencies, and the dependencies are called as transitive dependencies. Am I right, sir?
Yeah, all the child, all the main dependency, the jar, which is going to depend on other dependencies, okay, are all called as transitive dependencies. So how you can get to know about this? You can just go to this M2 directory. Just for further understanding, I'm explaining. Okay. Even though I'm spending much time, that's okay for it, because of course you should know about this Maven a little bit with little bit of clarity. So I don't mind spending time over here. Org Spring Framework and Spring Context, right? 5.3.7 is the version, and here you should notice that the jar is there. Spring Context jar is there. Similarly, you also have a POM file for this particular jar. If I open this, if we open this file, you should notice that what other dependencies that this particular Spring Context is required is aligned here. Can you see Spring AOP? So who's the root main group is your Spring Context artifact ID. Okay, the artifact ID is Spring Context, and this Spring Context requires what? Spring AOP, Spring Beans, Spring Core, and Spring Expression. So when it is going to the Spring AOP to refer, Spring AOP will have a POM file, and that file will refer other dependency. So it keeps on going till the depth of final dependency that is required to get use of the Spring Context. And those levels, right? The intrinsic levels of dependencies is what we call it as a transitive dependencies. You can also get to know that every library, the Maven libraries, those jars, libraries, jars, whatever way you want to call it, you call it. Those libraries will equivalently have a POM saying that to use this jar requires other jars as well. So that's how it gets interconnected. Hope this makes sense. And this is how Maven is managing itself in terms of managing the libraries pretty cleverly. Any question? Okay. So if you don't have any further questions, then probably we'll move forward. Now, looking at this pom.xml, okay, we captured all the dependencies right here, right? We have all the jars enabled. Looking at the Maven dependencies, when you expand it, you can see all the list of jars. Whatever we have included in the Maven will all get captured out here. Okay, so that is what it means. So looking at the Maven dependencies, you will have all the libraries, whatever you add in the pom.xml. Separately also, you can go and add the dependencies. So I've just added only the context configuration of dependencies, but automatically the other transitive dependencies are mapped, and it got referred in the Maven dependencies section. So any other question? Okay, so now let's go up to this project. As I was mentioning, right, we have to change the Java version. That's something very important. The J2SC 1.5. Okay, so this we need to change it to either 1.8 or 9 or 11 or 14, whatever it is. So this we need to do, and here default the resources directory will be missing. Okay, the resources source folder. Yesterday we created the source folder, right? Usually when you create a Spring Boot project, automatically the source folder of the resources will be there, but here it is not so. Okay, so we have to do the creation of the resources directory manually. Okay, and you can drop all the resources files into it. You're getting it? So now let's go to this project's properties. Right click the project and go to the properties, and there what you will find is Java build path. Okay, and you have a libraries section. Okay, go to the properties of the project. Okay, go to the properties of the project, and in the properties window you will be having Java build path option, and in the Java build path, from the Java build path option, you have something called libraries. Okay, under the libraries section you can see the library of Java, and the version that's mapped here is 1.5. so this we need to change. So how we can change is by clicking this, and you will have the edit option. You can select the edit, and you can change the version from 1.5 to the 14 version which I have currently in my mission. The next level of change that you have to do is the Java compiler. Okay, you have to change the compiler version as well. The compiler version need to get changed. Okay, that's something very important, right? So make a note of it. Now let's go ahead and do one by one. First, you click this and edit, and select the workspace default JRE to 14. In my case, it's 14. So in your case, it could be 16. Okay, whatever, but you try to upgrade from 1.5 because 1.5 is pretty old, right? So it's not advisable to work on top of 1.5 version of Java. So you can select that and click finish. Now you notice that it got changed to 14. Never forget to click this apply button. Only then you will see the version gets changed. Okay, and you can come back to the compiler, Java compiler, and there you have to change to Java 14. The compiler level should be upgraded to 14. Okay, and you apply this. Click yes. So the changes will be applied, and then finally you can apply and close. So the two things that you have to change is Java build path and the Java compiler. Okay, both need to be changed. So if you have any questions on this, please let me know. Hope this step is clear. So once the project reference to Java is changed, now the one last thing that we have to do is from the source main, you can right click, new, and go to the source folder. Okay, in the source folder, you can browse for source main. Okay, choose till main. I repeat again, from the source main, right click, new, source folder. Okay, browse, source main, and click OK. Now in the source main path slash, you can say resources. Like yesterday we created one resources source folder, right? The same way we need to create resources directory and click finish. So this will help you to create a resources directory underneath the source main directory structure of the project. Is that clear? So we have the resources directory, and this is your inventory service. You can notice you have the resources directory, right? And this resources directory will carry all your configuration files. Okay, all the configuration files will be available inside this resources directory. So please make a note of it. So now, I guess someone is on unmute. Yeah. So yeah, coming to the resources directory, we'll come to that resources directory a bit later. But right now I have the org.inventory directory, right? So we have to use that inventory directory. Let me right click and create one more package as we did like yesterday, dot service. Okay, we can call it as a service right now, a service package. And under that, I'm going to create a class called inventory service. Inventory service. This is a class. I'm creating a new class called inventory service. And we can create one more class called product service. This is the dummy class. We are not going to do any much of a real-time logic as such. Product service. Okay, hit finish. Right. So you have the inventory service and you have the product service, both are available. There might be a dependency between this product service and the inventory service. Okay, we'll come to that a bit later, but right now let's have a look at the product service. So product service is going to have a method called public void order product. So when you're ordering the product, right, first you have to go to the inventory service, connect to the inventory system and see if the product is available. Only then you'll be able to place the order for that particular product, right? If you go to the Amazon web store, probably you'll be seeing the options like the current product is not available. Currently, the product is not available. The reason they say is because the inventory stock probably might be below the threshold that they would have kept to accept the order for the particular product. Not necessarily it should be 0. They might have it for a backup. So they might have some 1,000 products in the store, but still when the product inventory status comes to 1,000, automatically you will get a response saying that the product is not available currently. So such simulation is what we are trying to think of here. Now from the product service, the order product, probably you can connect to the inventory service. In inventory service, you can check for the product availability. Okay, public, let's say Boolean product availability. Okay. So product availability is going to hit the database. Consider the product ID. Okay, you have to throw the product ID. So let's say int product ID, and using the product ID, it will go to the database, communicate with the database, and check if what is the total count of the product in the inventory system. So based on that, if the product is available, it will return true, else it will return false. So right now I'm just saying true without even doing a simulation to connect with the database, but let that be the case, not an issue. Then in the product service, based on the return of that inventory service, so here I'm going to create the inventory service object. See, one thing you have to notice here, the naming convention, okay, you have to closely monitor the naming convention which I'm using right now. The naming conventions are very much important. You can't just like that create obj1 or obj2. People who are already working in the development, probably you might not having much of a challenge to understand the naming convention standards, but I advise you to follow the standards. Okay, anytime you keep following the standards of this. Now, so once this object is manually instantiated, manually injected, you can use that inventory object, the inventory service object, dot check for the availability of the product, and the product ID I'm going to give is 1001, and this in turn returns the Boolean type product availability flag. Okay, so when the product availability flag says that the product is not available, then you have to do a different use case. Okay, if product available flag equals true. So you can say product available, else you can say currently product is unavailable, right? So this is just a simulation of the inventory system. Now what you can closely understand out of this is the product service, right? The product service is actually depending on the inventory service, correct? Hope you all will agree with this. Product service is depending on inventory service, and the inventory service is the one who is going to depend on the backend to get to know the availability of the product and pull the response, right? So yeah. So looking at this space, right? Now the dependency is completely injected via the programmer itself. We manage the instance. Okay, the one who managed the instance. I guess you would have seen a snippet of information which I've shared today on the group, right? Hope you would have read that message. That's piece of information, the one which is highlighted, right? It clearly mentions that what the IOC container is all about. And who's representing the IOC container? As I said yesterday, it's nothing but your application context, correct? So the application context is the representative of your IOC container who is going to manage all sorts of manageability of the particular object. But right now, we are not enabling the application context. Rather, we manually provide the instance. So this is tightly dependent. I believe I have given a more briefing about it yesterday. So understanding that this is going to be called as a tightly coupled environment, right? So any changes in the constructor of this object, then literally it will impact this product service. So like which you might have some 100 services, and you need to touch all the 100 services in order to make the change that you make in the inventory service of the constructor. That's one example that we can understand that how tightly coupled environment is a drawback for us. But let's try to replace this with the help of external injection. Okay, external injection. So you'll perform an external injection out here. So by doing that external injection, what happens is we are outsourcing the manageability of this object, and the external source who's going to inject from the external environment is none other than your IOC container. But the code should represent this IOC container, and that's why we bring in the AC. AC is nothing but application context. Hope this reiteration of what we discussed yesterday is helpful for you to recall. So now let's go ahead with this type. Let's go up to the application. And in the application, we are going to create the object of product service. Okay. Product service equals new product service. And in the product service object, from the product service object, you are able to call the method of order product and see what the output is. So let's go ahead and run them. So that's perfect. Product available. Okay, right now the product is available. So we can go, I mean, the order product can process further by placing the order to the specific vendor from where we are going to purchase the product. So this is the fundamental, but the same setup that we need to convert it using Spring Core. We need to bring the Spring Core features into it, right? So step by step we'll do it. But if you have any questions till this point, please let me know. This is same as like what we did yesterday, but a little bit of use case oriented. Hope you can follow up with me with more understanding. If in case you have any queries, please let me know. Any questions? Okay. So, okay. So if you have any questions, please do throw, because I don't know if you are all active or not. If in case you have, please do throw your questions so that we can wake up if we are sleepy. Now, okay, coming to the reverse work of managing the object, that is inversing mechanism, right? So inversion of control. So how do we do that inversion of control? So the first thing that we have to do is okay. So I'm going to the resources, source main resources directory. You can right click and create one from the resource directory. You create one XML file. Search for XML and you will get the XML. I'll repeat again. From the resources directory, right click, new, and go to other option and type XML. And choose the XML file, hit next. And here you're going to use application. Okay, application.xml. Any name would suffice, as I said. Not necessary that you need to follow the standards of application, but application is the traditional way in order to provide a configurations for Spring environment. So we call them as application or Spring application, Spring-application. Either way is fine. Spring-application also people used to use, but I am going to use it as application.xml. So hit next, next, and finish. So you'll get an empty template of an XML file. Okay, great. Now here where we need to feed in the configuration details. So what I'm going to do for that is I already have some sample template of that, so which I'm going to use right now. So I'm going to carry this namespace, okay, because I cannot recall the entire namespace. So XML namespaces have to be dropped first. Okay, that's good. That looks good. So we have captured the namespace. This XML header value is repeated. So we'll remove this. Okay. And the beans, as I said, right, the beans is the topmost tag, and we got to close them. Okay, so we have this beans as the base configuration, and inside this beans we are going to have a bean tag. It's going to be a bean tag. Inside the beans, it's going to be a bean configuration. So we are going to configure the files, literally saying that it is going to be a bean classes. Okay, so bean multiple bean configurations which you can do here. So beans is the root, and inside that you have multiple bean into it. So bean ID equals, I can give an ID. So for the first one is, let's try to hit the product. We are going to hit the product, right? So product service is in turn going to connect with inventory service. Product service is going to in turn connect with the inventory service. So for time being, I'm going to use the product service. Okay, so let's say product as an ID. Okay, so then you will have your the class name. Okay, so you'll be using an attribute called class to refer the class name. So class attribute, and inside the class attribute, you're going to refer the class name. What is the class name? Product service. And that's coming up from the package called org dot inventory dot service dot product service. So what this snippet says is, this particular snippet is trying to convey this particular snippet is trying to convey that, hey, IOC, please look into this configuration. Okay, please look into this configuration. What this configuration says is there is a class called product service. Now it's your turn to create an object. Create an object. Okay, create an object for the product service and try to refer that and try to refer that object with the name called product. Because you will have the object created and the object should be referred with some name, and that name is nothing but the product. You can give any name. ID is nothing but the identification of the instance that's going to be created for this class called product, a product service. Who's going to create? The product service is going to be created by this IOC container. The container is going to do this. But how do we hand over this configuration? This whole configuration is in the format of XML, right? It's completely in the format of an XML file. XML. Now this XML file is going to be the input file for your IOC. IOC is going to consider this XML, and throughout the course of its workflow, it will keep reading all the configurations from this XML file. It will read those bean configurations, but right now we have only one product service being configured, but we do have inventory service. That is also a Spring Bean component, right? So we need to add one more bean, and you need to provide an ID for the inventory service. Okay, and you have to provide the class name. That's nothing but org.inventory service class. But the most important thing is you have to do the wiring. Okay, product service is depending on inventory service. Product service is depending on inventory service. So inventory service instance, once it is created, need to be assigned to the product service, so that the product service will make use of the inventory service object to extend its functionality, like availability of the product. Functionality can be extended into it, and it will make use of that functionality to make the whole system work. You're getting it? But now, right now, it's very much simplified. I'm just focused only on the product service. We'll just try to access only the product service object. No other thing that we are going to access. Is that clear? But there are many things have to be learned, but we don't go much in detail about the XML. We'll come back to it for understanding the fundamental, but the most productive way to work around with Spring is moving up the ladder to Java-based configurations and annotation combined. If you have any questions, you can please, you're welcome to post it so that I'll see if I can respond. So I'll go back to the app. Now we need to make this application.xml accessible. Now, how do we access it? Now you can see here again, the product service is manually injected, right? The manual injection work is not advisable. Manual injection work is not advisable, but we are doing it. So anyways, now what I'm going to do is, instead of that, I'm going to say product service. And as like yesterday, I'm going to assign them to null. And if we execute this, we end up with a null pointer exception, correct? So I'm not going to do that, but let's go first and see instantiating your application context. So we have to trigger the application context. The context object equals new. Since it's an XML based configuration, right? We have to go for class path XML application context. Is that clear? Since it's an XML based configuration, we are supposed to use the class path XML application context. Now, within this, we are supposed to provide the XML name, spring-application.xml. So once you offer the file name, you can see that intentionally I have given the file name wrongly.
Application.xml or Spring
Yes,
application, sir?
it should be an application.xml, but intentionally I'm giving it spring-application.xml. Let's explore what's going to happen if I'm going to give a different file name rather than the available file name which the system can predict it from the resources directory. So since it's all aligned to the project's class path, it will automatically go and search into this all the list of directories and finding out if there is any possibility of getting the spring-application.xml. But unfortunately, we don't have such file in place, and so it's going to end up with an exception. But it's good to know what is that exception. You should know that. You should be aware of it, right? Because sometimes you might be asked with some questions in the interview. So you need to be aware that what type of an exception that comes up if we give a wrong XML file. Yeah, someone is having some doubt?
Yeah, that is resource not found exception.
Yes, we will wait and see what's going to be the exception type. So right now I've just configured this, right? So now we can just run this without doing any further steps. We'll just try to run them. Just save it all and then you run it. What Spring system is going to say is what we are going to see right now. Now, if you see that bean definition store exception type is bean definition store definition, right? Where the bean definitions are? Bean definitions are here. Spring bean. Every class is going to be a bean class. Henceforth, spring bean class. So bean is defined here. Bean definition store. We are storing all the bean definitions here in the application.xml. Bean definition store exception. So in the bean definition store exception, if you closely monitor, it's something relevant to the passing of XML file in order to read all the bean details, but unfortunately it's ending up with a file not found exception. This is technically not a resource directly, but it is referencing to the file of the XML, and it says file not found, okay, and cannot be opened because it does not exist. So this is your exception message anyways. So spring-application.xml does not exist, and it's a file not found exception, and the type of exception that the Spring recognizes for such order is bean definition store exception. And that's what is the exception that's been straight away thrown. But internally, if you go further, you can also see IO exception. And from the IO exception, you have more specific type of exception called file not found exception. Okay. So you can see the exception order as well here, right? So the one that we are understanding here is a bean definition store exception. Now, how do we get rid of this exception? You better give the right file name. So if that is the case, we can understand that the system is able to recognize the file perfectly. Okay. But right now you will get an exception because it's been pointed to null, but this exception will be resolved. So time being, I'm not going to use this code so that we don't need to see the error. But let's say it's going to be application 1 for a while. Let's rerun the code. And you see again the similar bean definition exception, but this time the file name is application1.xml. So we need to give the appropriate file name in order to make this code work. It's working. We don't get any response because there's no console response, right? So it's working. Means it detected this file. This file is detected perfectly. So let's try to sys out some statements saying configuration file is detected, right? So by this way, let's see what's going to be the console output. The console output is going to be configuration file is detected. Why? Yeah, it's coming. So configuration file is detected, right? But what if in case, if I do some mistakes inside the XML file? So inside this XML file, by mistake, I've given some other name. Okay. Product service 2. But ideally, we don't have the product service 2 class. So what will happen if I give a product service 2 class? Anyways, at the compile time, there is no problem, no issues. But while we run them, is that going to really look out for that particular class? Let's see that.
Class not found exception.
So now you can see that there is an exception. Now what you can understand right now is IOC is trying to read that code and it is trying to look out for a class called product service 2. Okay. But if you see cannot load bean class exception, cannot load the bean class. IOC container says, hey, I cannot load the bean product service 2. Why is it so? It's because the product service 2 bean with the name product defined in the class path resource application.xml could not be found. The class could not be found. Intrinsically, okay, in depth, yes, of course, it's a class not found exception. But from the Spring environment, what it throws out for the developer to understand clearly is cannot load the bean class. Cannot load the bean class in more detail that it says that particular class could not be found. Is that clear? So this is further understanding that your IOC container is going into the configuration, getting the details, manipulating them, and then trying to create an object for it. But unfortunately, it is unable to create the project. I'm sorry, the product. The product service object. It's because such class doesn't exist. So now by giving the right class name, let's see what's going to happen. Perfect. Now there is no error. So now the understanding is your object is created and it's kept in the object pool. The bean object is readily available. You're getting it. The IOC container is able to create the project, create the object and keep it in the object pool. Now, how do we access that object? That's the next question. How are we going to access that object? I'm not going to manually create the instance because the instance is already created, right? So how are we going to access them? To access them, we need to use context.getBean. There is a method called getBean coming from the context object. Okay, context.getBean, and here you can refer the name called product. What is this product? The product is nothing but the ID which is referring to the instance of the product service. Just now I explained in detail, right? So this product ID have to be offered here to the getBean function, so that the context, what I refer here as a context is IOC. I'm asking, hey IOC, please give me the bean of the ID referred as product. So it will throw the product service object back. And here we are going to have them as the typecasted to product service. Why is it? Because the getBeans return is actually the object, the topmost class in Java, right? GetBeans return type. Okay, the getBeans return type will be of generic type, object type. Okay, a bean factory which is cooking up, which is the reference of this object. There are multiple return types are there in the getBean. You can see there are different parameterized getBeans are there. Okay, polymorphic getBeans are there. But if you closely monitor that the string name what we have offered here is a product, and for that it is returning an object. Bean factory is the one who is actually helping in cooking up the object. The bean factory is all the resemblance to the IOCs internally. So the object we can't take. The topmost object have to be typecasted to the product service. Then that's what I'm doing out here. We have one more way or approach to eliminate this typecasting. Okay, so how is that? That can be done by this way. If you are not interested to have the typecasting, and if you are aware that there's going to be only one object in the existence, it's better to avoid this product, and you don't need to typecast them. Instead, you can directly mention with one more way of product service dot class. That's it. You're getting it. So we are avoiding the typecasting because right in front I'm asking you provide product service, not through an ID.
Product service itself class only, sir.
Yeah, product service is a class. Yeah, the reference that you are supposed to give here is a dot class reference. You cannot just give product service. Okay, so that won't make sense what you're asking for. So it should be a product service dot class. So what happens here is you're providing the required type. Okay, the specific class type, the required class type, you can see, right? So that there is no need for further typecasting because the object type is not going to be returned. It's going to return that specific type of the product service internally. We don't need to do a typecast. And now we can go ahead and enable this piece of code in order to invoke the product service object and call the product service class method. The method is nothing but order product. Now, if I run them, you will see the return is going to be product available. So your configuration file is detected, and we are using the IOC container instance to get the root class, that is your product service, and from the product service you are able to access the order product, and the order product is returning the product available. But I'm not instantiating manually in my product service reference here. It's been given by the external entity. I'm not manually creating the instance. You're getting it? So that's what the understanding here is. So please make a better understanding here. If you have any questions till this point, please let me know.
Sir, two way we can get the bean from the XML, right? One is passing that object reference ID from the XML. Then another way we can pass the class name, product service. The second way we will sure only one object is in the Spring pool, right?
Yeah, see, not necessarily only one.
That
It
is
can be many.
product object.
Yeah, it can be many also. But the challenge here is you will be having certain challenges because you will not be clear of which instance carries what type of a value. And that's why we go for ID. So what happens in ID is for the same, okay, you can have two IDs like this. And now it's going to be a product one. Okay, two instances there right now. Now, by having the two instances in place, when I'm literally to say it should be a product service with a constructor, let's say we have something called, this is to just simulate this option. Let's go for a product service constructor. And here I'm going to give string name and then just sys it the name of the product. Okay, now there's an argumented constructor. Now for this argumented constructor in the application, you are supposed to go further down and say constructor -args. Okay, so constructor -args, and then you have to provide a value for the argument that you're going to pass. So let's say product one, and it's not taking it from the namespace. So just a sec, let me check for a better namespace. It's 3.0 constructor args starting with an element. Okay. Property, we don't have any property. We have bean property. Probably these properties we will learn it in the annotations part. Let me see if I okay, given args, it's a problem, I guess.
Try constructor parameters.
Yeah, reference index. So yeah, product one, and take this out. going to be product 2. Okay, so we have product 1 and product 2 as a 2 different IDs, and I have a constructor argument, right? So what this says is, while you're creating an instance for this product service, you need to pass this value, okay? Or let's say, to be more precise, I just want to call this product as iPad, and I'm going to call this product as, let's say, road. Okay, so I have 2 different products, but the class is same. So thinking that there are 2 objects, but both the object is going to carry a 2 different value. So I'm saying, well, you invoke the constructor, you need to pass this value. That piece of information is also provided in here. So if you come back to this product service, you can notice that there's a constructor with an argument. When the IOC is going to create, there's only one argumented constructor here. So it is mandate that we have to set the constructor arguments there, right? So while it is creating an instance, it will pass that value that you offered. Now let's come to this app. And now if you run this, you're seeing that there is an iPad and road. It means what? The respective instance got created. There are 2 instances in the object pool. Configuration file is directed. So everything happens at this point of execution of code. At this 13th line of code execution completion, your instance is all created and kept ready. And then now, while you're trying to get the bean as product service, right? So it says no qualifying bean type, no unique bean definition exception occurs. The reason is there are 2 products of the same type is available. 2 products service objects are available. So which one are you asking for? Which one are you asking for? So when you have such kind of approach of code, then literally using this product service straight away will be a drawback. So the type of exceptions that we end up here is no unique bean definition exception. Okay, no unique bean definition exception. When does no unique bean definition exception occurs? When you have 2 bean instances of the same type. 2 instances of the same bean type or the same class type. Either way you can call it as, right? At the time we have this challenge. So in order to resolve that, I'm going for a specific one by calling it as a product 1, or let's say product 2. Now when I say product 2, anyways, both the instance will get created. Okay, you will have both the instance, the iPad and the road, and now the product is available. The road product is available. That's what it means. So to be more precise, you can even append them out here. Plus string product name, and you can just comment it. Say this dot. Literally, there's no need of a list. Product name equals name, and you can append this product. So that's it. So as a small minor change on the code. Okay. Now if I run this, you will see the product available for road. Okay, you can see that because I'm looking for that particular project. I'm looking for that particular product. So what if in case I need iPad? If you want both, of course you can invoke them both. Okay, now you get an iPad, so you can just go and call both the you can request for both the object. It's going to be product service 1 and product service 2. and you ask for product service 1, whether the product is available or not. And also, in turn, you can ask for product service 2 object and check if that particular product is available. So both the products are available. You're getting it? So when you use this approach, what exactly happens is you're just calling it with the bean type name. This is type name approach, but this is more specific to the ID type. Okay, you're going for the ID, giving a name of the ID, and then asking for which instance you want. Is that clear?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So the type of exception that we face, there is no unique bean definition exception. And also let's make a note of this. So when there's a product service 1, ideally you don't have the product service 1 class, cannot load the bean class exception. So if the file is not available, bean definition store exception. I guess I'm right, correct? So these are the different types of exceptions that we have learned today. So there might be multiple such type of exceptions. Do we need to remember all those exceptions? Not necessary. I don't think to that extensive questions will be asked if you go for interview. But from learning point of view, yes, of course, it's good to have a learning on these. Okay, so no unique bean definition exception, cannot load bean class exception, bean definition store exception is all different variants of exception types that the Spring is handling. Whenever the system encounters with such kind of an issue or a problem. Okay. Yeah. So do you have any further questions on this? Please let me know. Any questions? You are welcome. Yeah. No questions?
So instead of using new, we are having this bean concept, correct, sir?
Instead of using new, yeah, instead of using the new keyword in order to instantiate every time manually in the program, in the code, so it's going to be pretty huge, right? When the enterprise system comes into the picture. So if you see in my project, I'm working for 3 lakh code base. Okay, so 3 lakh code base is something huge. So I might be having somewhere around let's say 400, 500 classes or 600 classes. Maintaining all those classes instances manually from the programming point of view, it's so hard and it's a time consuming factor. But leaving it to the IOC container, the job is done. But the only place that you have to break your head, is a proper way of configuring on the configuration file. So it's just not about thinking of avoiding the new keyword. Spring is more than that actually. But the base line of understanding is, yes, of course, it is used to avoid the manual creation of the instances. There is a meaning. Hope that makes sense. Any other question? Okay. So I guess we'll just take some 5 minutes of break. That's because it's almost 7. So we'll take some 5 minutes break and then we'll come back. Hello. Yeah, am I audible?
Oh, yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay. So that's what it is in terms of going for a Spring framework. But there are many magical things that are going to happen as we go along with more learning and more study of advanced concepts in Spring. Then ideally you will understand the power of Spring. But this is all about the base mantra for going behind the framework, a beautiful framework, enterprise framework called Spring, so that you can ensure your dependency managements are automated via the IOC container. So who's the IOC container representative is nothing but your application context. And the type of application context that we are currently using is ClassPath XML application context. So with this set of context setting, I guess probably we can just catch up with a few more things. So here, now we have to bring in the dependency, right? So how do we bring in the dependency? Like for example, the product service have to depend on the inventory service. That's what we have studied so far, correct? So we have this product service, and the product service have to depend on inventory service, right? So there is a dependency. And if you notice that the dependency that we have created here is the manual dependency, this part. Now this need to be eliminated. Okay. And here also, the IOC container will inject the instance. And it's not the way that we did so far in the main class. Main class, it's the accessing the root. So we went through the context object and we got it. But again, coming here, you cannot access another context. You cannot create one more representative for IOC to get the inventory service. You cannot keep on creating application context. Application context object should be created only once for the whole application system. There should be only one representative for a IOC container. You can break them up to two, but ideally that's not the way how a Spring application should be designed for. You should only have a single application context and that's the starting point. And from there, everywhere, when you want the dependencies to be fulfilled, when you want to satisfy the dependencies, you have to go for injection mechanisms. Did we perform the injection mechanisms in the previous code? No, we haven't. We went directly to the context asking for a bean. Hey, context, give me the bean. Context.getBean. We forcibly went to the context and then asked for the bean. But injection service is something which need to be configured so that it does its job automatically without even the code goes and asks for it. And that's how you have to define your code. And that injection mechanism is what which we are going to follow right now so that you can avoid this further manual dependency work. Hope you're getting it. This is your manual dependency work, right? Exactly, it's a manual dependency. Manual dependency, right? So how do we avoid this manual dependency? We have to inject the instance. Is the instance available? Is the product service inventory service instance is available? Yes, of course. Inventory service instance is available. It's already cooked up by the IOC container because we have already configured the inventory service as one of the bean, right? Inside the application.xml. We did that, right? So having said that, what I'm going to do right now is quickly go ahead and comment it. Probably let's copy them. Copy this, comment it. Paste it. And remove this instance creation work. This is not our job anymore. But the question is, how are we going to inject it? How the inventory service instance is going to be injected. So now you can see this is dependency, correct? Product service is depending on inventory service. Product service is depending on inventory service. So someone outside, an entity outside, okay, should look at the configuration file, right? Cook up the objects and keep it ready in the pool. And this external entity like IOC container will fetch the object and inject it for the dependency that is observed inside this class. Injected. So what is getting injected? The dependency. For this class, the dependency is inventory service. Product service is depending on inventory service. So when the product service is depending on inventory service, it's a dependency that's engaged. So dependency, someone should inject it from the external source. And that's what your IOC is going to do. And so this is called as dependency injection. Dependency injection. But what is actually going to inject it is nothing but the instance. Okay, the instance is going to get injected. Instance is going to get injected. There is a meaning. You're getting it. So let's go and say as dependency injection. Now, how is that it's going to happen? How are we going to do that? How are we going to do that? Step 1. Constructor based injection. Okay. Step 2. Setter based injection. Constructor based injection or setter based injection. Okay. Literally, we cannot call this as a step 1 and step 2. Mode 1 and mode 2, we can call it as. So mode 1 is going to be constructor based injection. Mode 2 is going to be setter based injection. So let's see one by one. The first approach is constructor based injection in the product service. So like how you have this string name, right? We referred the same way we are going to provide an inventory service constructor. So the constructor type product service, and here you're going to have the inventory service. Now, here we are supposed to use the this.inventory service equals inventory service. Okay. This is your constructor based injection. It's called as constructor based injection, mode 1. You can go for either way of choice, either a setter based injection or constructor based injection. It depends on the scenario of your use case. You can go for the choice. Constructor based injection is something you need an instance at the time of an instance of the class is going to be created. When the product service object is going to be created via its product service constructor, at that time itself you are in need of an inventory service. You're getting it? Yeah.
So suppose this product service depends that three or more inventory services means like this is inventory service for this product service. Suppose some other classes it
Yeah,
means
of
some other
course.
class
You should create those many number of constructors. Or
individually. Okay.
yeah, it depends on if it is an individual, you can go ahead, or you need to provide the arguments here itself.
Okay.
So let's say product service. I'm sorry. Let's say cart service. Okay. So now what happens is you will set that cart service instance also down here itself in the product service, 2-argumented constructor. So in the XML, you need to provide the reference for both the instance. Okay. So that's how it is. You can also have an independent constructor, or you can have both, because sometimes you want only the cart service instance. For certain use case, you need only the cart service instance. So you have to inject only the cart service. You don't need inventory service for that particular flow. So at that time, you can have an independent constructor having a different injection mechanisms, or you can have a single constructor carrying a multiple injection service as well. Okay, is that clear?
It's clear.
Yeah. So now going to the configuration part. Now this constructor should work, right? So there are two types of constructors. Anyways, this constructor is going to be picked up. And here, if you see the inventory service is still not, and it's not carrying any instance. If you just go ahead and run them, you'll get a null pointer exception. Boom. That's what happens. Null pointer exception. Why? Because you only have a call to the string name type of product service. Okay. So, but the creation of the instance for the product service is only via this constructor. So it is not picking this constructor. At the time, your inventory service is still not injected, and it doesn't carry any instance. So when you try to use a non-instance reference variable, which is equivalent to the null reference, when you use a null reference to call a method or a function, then obviously you will end up with a null pointer exception. And that's what is happening here. You're getting it? So how do we ensure that this injection happens? By calling this constructor. Now IOC is doing its job perfectly. It only calls this constructor because that's what is configured here, correct? That's what is configured. Your constructor argument is for reference to the string type, correct? So what we have to do there is, now we are in need of creating an inventory service bean, right? Inventory service bean ID inventory class org dot inventory dot service dot inventory service. So instance is created. Perfect. So IOC container knows that it has to create. Okay, let's not complicate this. So let's try to remove this one temporarily. I don't need them. Now, okay, it doesn't matter. Anyways, let's have this. So this inventory service is going to be the reference to the product service, right? So product service is carrying one of the argument, and in this using the value, because this is a primitive type of data type, primitive type, or probably string can be referenced as both primitive and object, but string is an object type, but it's more equivalent to the primitive references at times. But this inventory is not a primitive type. It's a custom defined data type. It's a class type, right? So in that case, you can't just like that throw an attribute called value. Value will not be sufficient. So you have to go for ref. Okay, you have to use a reference. Reference is nothing but the inventory Okay, yeah. Mute. Yeah. So yeah. Now looking at this, I'm referring the inventory to the one of the constructor argument, and the inventory reference type is nothing but the inventory service by itself. You're getting it? So ref keyword is used to refer one instance, one class or one bean's instance into another instance injection mechanism. It could be a constructor based reference or a setter based reference. Right now it's constructor argument. Reference is going to be an inventory. That is the meaning. Now looking at this, if I execute, I guess I'm calling the product one there. It's not called for the product 2. Product available null. The product available null because this part is not invoked, right? This constructor is not invoked. You are going through this constructor. So constructor based injection is working fine. Okay, the product name is alone is not taken up, but then it's still you cannot call both the constructor. Okay, and when an instantiation happens, you can either call one of the constructor, but you can carry this parameter out here also. Okay, and you can give the parameter numbering order in order to provide the value for this string name. Okay, the value can be provided for the string name, and the reference can be provided for the custom type of an object. So this part works fine. There is no null pointer exception. Now this instance is injected. How the instance is injected? Via the constructor based injection service. We do have a setter based injection service. So for setter, it's going to be a different style of code. But right now, this is a constructor based injection mechanisms that we follow, and this can have multiple injection services. So here what you have to do is you are supposed to provide those many number of references. The constructor argument have to be provided for multiple reference types. Okay, so accordingly you can have multiple constructor arg here for each and every references. In the order of constructor arguments, you are able to provide multiple references. You're getting it? So, but usually constructor references or constructor based injection services can be avoided because of this complexity of invoking the constructor. Every time we cannot think of having constructors. It depends on the use case and the requirement. You go for the constructor based injection, but you better try to avoid constructor based injections and then go for a setter based injection. That would be the right approach and right style of injection services. But still, it's possible to have a constructor based injection services whenever there is a use case prompts you to use a constructor based injection. Is that clear? But a lot of complexities that we have in XML, which we will not face it when we go to the Java based configuration. In Java based configuration, it's ideally going to be a different way. Okay, you can pretty easily do the job. But in XML, it's slightly complicated. Okay. Any questions you have, please do let me know. So if you look at this piece of code, I guess somewhere this guy also have done the constructor reference. Here. Okay, reference this particular class is actually depending on the index service. Constructor-arg ref keyword in order to ref to the index service. Before what we did was we were using some value attribute. Okay, that's for the the primitive type. Okay, but if it's specific to the reference, it's we have to give the ref. You can see there's a property. This property is nothing but the setter based call. Okay, so that's which we are going to do right now. Instead of having a constructor in our product service. Okay, so let's try to comment this temporarily. The mode 2 is going to be a setter based injection. So public void set inventory service. You need to follow the naming standards. Okay, the rest is all the same style of code which you can copy paste. Okay, you got to take the argument in place. Instead of constructor, it's a setter. Set inventory service. For this, we are creating a setter method. Setting the reference for this, setting an instance for this reference variable. Okay, so we are using a setter based. So to conclude, we just have a sysout and say setter based injection. Okay, setter based injection. For project, I'm sorry, for product 2, let's go for constructor based. Okay, so I'm going to use both. You can have both. Right? But we don't have a no argumented constructor as such here. That's fine. That's okay. So there are setter based and there's a constructor based. So if you go up to the XML, you're focused on product 1 to be a constructor based. Product 2 is going to be a property based, that is setter based. So if it's going to be a property based in the product 2, what you have to do here is property. Okay, setter based injection property. You have the name. What is the name of the property? This is setter based injection. So what is the name of the property? Name of the property is inventory service. So we have by name, by type references. Okay, so I'm just using the by name type. Name equals inventory service. And then we can use the reference. Who's going to be the reference for this particular setter? Is your inventory. Same as like what we did in the constructor. The only difference is in constructor we don't use name because it's just an argument, right? We are just passing the argument reference. But here for this particular inventory service, it is going to call the setter method and inject that particular dependency of reference. That's nothing but the inventory service instance will be injected. That is the meaning. So now I've configured the XML in such a way that it invokes both the constructor based injection and the setter based injection. Let's see what's going to happen. So whenever you call a property means it's a setter based injection. Okay. Okay. No default. Yeah, this is looking for the default constructor. See, it's good to learn that. Now it says no default constructor found. Now what happens? This product service need to be created, right? When the IOC container is going to create a product service instance. See, it's a quite interesting concept to learn now. The product service, this particular product service need to be created with an instance. So who's going to create that instance? Your IOC is going to do that. When IOC is going to do this product service instance creation, how the IOC will create an instance of this product service? You need a constructor to create an instance. You all agree with that, right? Constructor is the main tool for creating an instance. For this, it's fine. There is a constructor. Okay. But for this, there is no constructor. Right. So I didn't give any constructor demarcation here, only property demarcation. So what happens in that case is when I don't have a constructor reference here, it says I'm not able to create an instance for the product service because there is no default constructor at least present in the class to create a constructor. I'm sorry, to create an instance. So it's clearly mentions that point. So what I'm trying to do for that is, let me see if I can call that constructor. That's what our plan was, right? To call the constructor value. So I'm going to inject with constructor arg and giving the value to be of road. Okay. So now let's see how the Spring is going to consider this. Everything is perfect, and you get this setter-based injection. The setter-based injection, the first thing is constructor-based injection. Okay, so the first approach is constructor-based injection. The second is setter-based injection, and then the product is available. That's because in the product one only we are calling. Okay, in the app wise, if you see, you are invoking for only the product one. So let's go for product 2 and see what's there in the product 2. In the product 2 kitty, you will be having road. See? So constructor-based injections and setter-based injections both are in place. Constructor-based injection and setter-based injection both are in place. So the first thing is the constructor configuration is done. So it invokes the constructor to inject that object of inventory service. Now you can clearly see, okay, you can clearly learn this, that there are two product service instance, PS1, PS2, right? And there is only one inventory service instance. Okay. So I'm sorry. So let's assume that this is the object. Object of whom? The inventory service. The inventory service object is here. And this is going to be your product one service instance. And this is going to be your product service 2's instance. Now what happens? You are in need of getting this instance into the product service. Inventory service instance is required by the product service 1. Product service 1, right? So how it can happen? It goes and approaches the IOC container. Through what IOC container it is approaching? Through the constructor based. Via the constructor, the product service is asking, hey, please give me the inventory service instance so that I will be able to access the inventory service functions and then proceed further for my workflow. So ideally, IOC container will go and look out if there is an object of the inventory service. While the IOC creates an instance of the product service, it will inject that object for the product service 1. But if you look at the product service 2, when product service 2 goes and asks for the IOC container, hey, please give me the instance of the inventory service, at that time the IOC will understand that the product service 2 is looking out for the injection of the inventory service only through the setter based injection, not the constructor. So for product service 1, it is constructor based. For product service 2, it is setter based injection. But still we invest a line of code. We still invest few lines of code out there, right? To create a setter, to create a constructor, it seems to be a little complicated. So even though if you look at the point that management of the instance is taken care of in the whole enlarged system by the IOC container, but still we are investing a lot of time in configurations and little bit of hard codings are required. And that is which we can eliminate if we go for Java based configuration and also combined with annotations. Okay, so you'll be having annotations, right? So you can use annotations in order to avoid that problem. So one way is you can use annotations. The other way is you can use XML. It's up to your choice. But XML is not in use anymore because we have grown to the depth of Spring Boot. Even the configuration is a little bit of automated, so we don't need to worry upon doing too much of configurations as well. But it's all where it all starts. Spring means where it all started. It all started from the XML based configuration. And from XML based configuration, they have slightly introduced to the annotation based configuration. And from the annotation based configuration, they have swiftly jumped into the Java based configuration. So you can either have a XML plus annotation combination. Okay, you can also combine annotation with XML config, or you can use Java config plus annotation combination in order to reduce your lines of code of configurations. But ideally, this approach is going to be obsolete. Okay, this approach is going to be deprecated. Moreover, I'm not sure when it will be deprecated, but looking forward that sooner it will get deprecated, so that we will be going behind the scene of Java configurations with annotation. So the whole XML file will get replaced with the help of Java configuration, the Java class. We will introduce the Java class in order to write all these configurations in our own language, in the Java language, rather than writing in XML jargons or terminologies. We'll be writing in our own Java lines of code. So that seems to be pretty much understandable, and it's pretty easy for the new learner to get framework. That's what it means. Is that clear? If you have any questions till this point, you can ask. I'm not going to go more in depth into the XML because ideally we have to jump into the Java-based configurations. But still, if you have any questions, please let me know. Any questions? No questions?
Sir, product to service we are calling via the setter method injection, right?
Product to service we are not calling. Product service is
Yeah, that object name.
getting the inventory service instance via the setter.
Yeah, that setter method. But still, we are configure with some constructor based annotation.
Constructor based, tag.
Yeah.
This one you are saying?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, this one is required, as I said, right? To create an instance, what is required? If you want to create one class instance, what is required for creating an instance?
Yeah, with via constructor we can create the object.
Correct. So mandate you need a constructor, right? Without a constructor, we cannot. So if you deliberately don't write, so I have a class called employee. Okay. Inside this employee class, it's an empty class. Assume this. Will I be able to create an instance? Will I be able to create an instance or not?
Yes, with the help of default constructor.
Excellent. Correct. So what is the assumption? What is our assumption here? There is a
Default constructor.
default constructor, which is not visible to us, correct?
Yes.
But the default constructor is completely it's of no use because it's completely empty, no argumented, nothing is there. It's just empty. But still there is a default constructor which is helping us to create an object of employee, correct?
Yes.
The same way in the product service, okay, when you're instructing the IOC container to create an instance of the product service, IOC container should require one constructor. Either it can be a default constructor or it should look out for the explicit constructor, correct? Explicitly, we should have written the constructor. It should look out for that. But if you look at this line, if I don't give this part, this piece of code, sorry, what will happen? Assume that I don't give this line of code. What is the understanding for the IOC container? What it will understand? When it is trying to create one more instance of the product service. See, when the IOC is creating an instance for this product service, this part of configuration, it's very clear that it's going to call one constructor, correct?
Yes.
And that constructor is going to be of what? Looking out for the reference of inventory. That's pretty clear. So IOC is not having any challenge in that, correct? There's no problem. But now IOC here, okay, in this point, when it is trying to create the product 2, is there any reference to the constructor or tag is mentioned here?
No.
No. If no, then what IOC's assumption is? What IOC's assumption should be? IOC containers assumption should be what? That class should have one
default constructor.
Correct. But if you go to the product service, do we have a default constructor?
No, I think we have explicit write one constructor.
So when you have an explicit, when you have the explicit constructor, what happens to your default constructor?
It will be overridden by the explicit constructor.
Correct. That is what is happening. So, So now what happens is I don't have any other choice. I have to give some. I am being forced to call some constructor here. Okay. Otherwise, it will throw that error that this particular instance can't be created because it doesn't have a suitable constructor to create. Hope you're getting it.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
So that is the reason that I had this line to be coded so that it at least calls that second type of constructor to just pass the value of the string. Okay. But let's think of in the other way. Product service. Going to the product service. Okay. And in the product service, I'm going to have one constructor, one more constructor. But that constructor is going to be deliberately no argumented constructor. But I don't have a default constructor here because it's got overridden to explicit constructor. But I have a no argumented constructor. If I have a no argumented constructor, okay, I'm trying to remove this. Okay, I'm trying to remove this part. I don't have a shortcut key reference here, so let me cut this off, save it, and then run it. Now it is working fine still. There is no problem. Before we had an error, right? But now this time there is no error. Why? Now what the IOC assumes, even though there is no constructor deliberately given, it will automatically go and look out for what constructor?
No argument.
Exactly. No argumented constructor. As simple as that. So if you don't have a default constructor, since you have given some parameterized constructors, you better carry one no argumented constructor in order to avoid such scenario of problems. Okay. But if you notice that both products are having null product name, why? Because we are not calling that string reference of constructor anywhere, right?
Yeah. Yes. Name of the product we can't.
Yeah, we haven't invoked that. We haven't provided the value for that, and the invocation of that constructor doesn't happen. Hope this makes sense.
Yes, sir.
But only one constructor can be called. Now you can ask a question. So can we have call for two constructors? Can we have a call for two constructors? Two constructors call will not make any sense, right? One particular product service can't call multiple constructors to create an instance. It can call only one constructor to create an instance. But sitting inside the constructor, you can call another constructor by using the this keyword, or if it's a base class, you can use a super keyword to call the super class constructor. Or if it's the same class constructors you need to invoke, then you can use this keyword to call the constructor. That's an internal link. But to create one instance of a class, You are enforced to use only one constructor. So this approach won't work, correct? But multi-parameterized constructor is fine. Multi-parameterized constructor is fine. At that time, you'll be giving multiple references here. Reference and one more reference. Okay, so 2 argumented constructor, 3 argumented. You keep giving multiple references, or in that case. So that kind of an assumption is fine. But one instance can call only one constructor deliberately. Internally, a call can happen from a constructor to another constructor. Call can happen, but an instance creation can happen only through one constructor in place. So all these have to be kept in mind. Anyways, but that will take some time unless you get meddled with the code more deep, then only you will be understanding to that extent of informations. But these pieces of informations are essential to be grabbed if in case you are going to sit in front of an interview. Yeah. Any other question? Okay. I guess probably we can use the remaining time for questionnaire time. So straight away, what we can do is going to the org inventory. I can right click, create a class called service configuration. Okay. And inside the service configuration class, we can go ahead and define at configuration. Okay. And public void create inventory instance. Any method name you can do. Return, I'm sorry, here I've given as void. It should be inventory service. Return new inventory service. And public. This time it's going to be a product service. So create product service, return new product service. And here you need to do the injection. Injection of what? Inventory service. So deliberately, you'll be giving a call to this method. So this is how you inject in Java-based configuration. When you call the method, what the method returns? The method returns the inventory service, and the inventory service instance is injected inside the product service. But both need to be demarcated as at bean. What is the tag name in the XML here? For every bean, what is the tag name that we use? Bean, correct? Bean. It's a constructor-based injection. Here also it's a setter-based injection. Here it is bean. So bean is used everywhere. So here you will use that annotation called at bean. So all the methods which are doing it for the configurations have to be marked as at bean. Okay, and these at bean can have a name. And what is that name is going to be? You can give any name. So product 1. There also we gave that, right? You remember ID. There we call it as an ID, but here we call it as a name. This is not a class name. Okay, this is the name of that ID. So here you can call it as inventory. What if in case if I don't give a name at all? It's going to take the method name as the name of that particular instance. ID references. The name of the method will be considered. Okay, so I'm deliberately giving this. So a class which is marked as at configuration is considered to be a Java-based configuration file. Java-based configuration file. You're getting it? So what am I supposed to do? Anyways, I'm just giving you a gist of information. No worries. Next week we'll be continuing more in detail about this. So going to the app, what we have to do here is we have to use this piece of code down here. Okay, and instead of this, you have to use annotation based configuration. I'm sorry. Annotation config application context. And up here, you have to say service configuration dot class. Are you getting it? So in place of XML, what we are replacing? Java class. Instead of class path XML application context, we are supposed to use annotation config application context. As simple as that. Now, the IOC container, we don't need this, right? As I said, for the whole application, you can have a single context. So it's going to be a service configuration, and the service configuration, the service configuration Java class is going to have all the configuration details. It's pretty simple here because it's all in our own language. We do it. But if you compare this with the XML, it seems to be a little trivial or seems to be a little complicated. Correct? So which one would we prefer? We prefer for going for a Java-based configuration combined with annotation. Java-based configuration combined with annotation. That's something very important to make a note of it. Okay. From where from where these are referring to the Spring Bean classes. So which are your Spring Bean classes? The product service, inventory services, all Spring Bean classes. Correct? So we'll discuss more in detail about this Java-based configuration in the next upcoming week. Until then, you can just have a practice on all these piece of codes, whatever we have discussed. I will be sharing these codes and I'll be uploading it on the GitHub, and I'll be sharing the GitHub link from where you can actually get the source code, and that will be shared by tomorrow. So now if you have any questions, please go ahead. We have another 10 more minutes so that we can I could answer for all your questions.
So through XML file, there is one constructor wise or else setter based, you said? No?
Yeah, setter based is this one. We call to the setter by using the property. Yeah.
But in Java configuration file wise, at bean.
It's the same. So what you do is if it is a setter based, it's right now the product service is itself is a constructor in case, right? Okay. So you're injecting. There is no point in talking about that right now. Okay, it will be a little confusing, but I'll just give you a glimpse of information. So if you look at this, service configuration, it's a direct instance that we are giving it to this product service. If it's a constructor based, if it's not a constructor based, you will remove this. Okay. And on top of the constructor, you are supposed to call the set inventory service. And in the set inventory service method, you will call this method internally to pass the instance of the inventory service. Are you getting it? You're getting it. So literally the syntax doesn't seem to be good. So you first look out for the creation of the product service. Okay, you'll create the product service. So the product service instance is created. Now what you have to do is product service dot set inventory service. That is the setter method that we call, and inject this instance into the product service object through this way. Okay. Finally, what you have to do is you have to return product service. It's the same style that we use in normal Java code. Okay, but it's special. Why it is special, I'll show you in the next week how it is special, because Deliberately, we can do this like a factory class. It looks more like a factory class. No, it is not, because this can be a little bit of magical work. IOC will understand this because we have to talk about Singleton Bean. So Singleton Bean is an instance where only one instance will get created for that type. Okay, so you can create multiple instances also. Okay, so we'll discuss about those different types of beans that we can create. Prototype beans are there, Singleton beans are there. Okay, request based beans are there. For every request, a bean will get created. An instance will get created. Okay, so when you go in detail with that, then you will understand what this bean annotation can magically do. But this is how you do it. If it's a setter based injection, this is how we do this. If you compare it with the XML, you can understand that. In the XML, what we did, we created this product 2 and we call the setter method. And for the setter method, we have set the inventory reference. The same job is what I'm doing here as well. If you do a slight comparison, you'll get to know about it. I created the product, and inside the product service instance is there. And that instance is going to call the setter method. And in the setter method, I'm passing the inventory reference. Here, that's it. These names are only for direct call to the bean. Okay, you cannot use these names internally here. Okay, in Java based configuration, these names are a direct call from the container. So like context.getBean, at the time you will mention the name as inventory. Context.getBean, we did this right initially for product service. You remember this getBean. You can get for any bean, correct? So when you use the getBean method and refer the name, if you want to refer the name, then at that time you will be having the usage of this name for each beans which can be used. So we have a long way to go on to it because we have auto wiring. Right now we are doing wiring manually. Okay, you can see that set inventory, all these are wiring manually. In the next week, you will see that I will remove all these code and this configuration class will be utterly empty. Okay, this particular configuration class will be completely empty, but still you will do the same job of what you're doing here in the code can be done with the help of auto configurations by using auto wiring mechanism. How do we do that? We'll see in the next week. So any question? Any other question? It's pretty simple to understand this. So take time and try to do the comparison and see how this XML syntax and the Java-based configuration looks like. We haven't completed this Java-based configuration yet. We have to execute and see if that works fine or not. Obviously, it will work fine, not a problem, because in place of XML, we are just replacing the Java file and the type of application context is different. That's the only difference that you see here. Yeah. So any questions, please do let me know. No questions? Okay. So I guess then we can wind up. Thank you so much for your time and hope you will have some work to do this week. I advise you to spend some 30 minutes at least per day. I knew that you people might be working, so you have hell a lot of work to be done in the weekdays. On the weekdays, you might be engaged with your official works. But what I advise you is try to spend some 30 minutes per day. I personally do that for my personal upskilling on different other technology stacks. So every day I spend minimum 1.5 hours. Morning, probably I'll try to figure out some 45 minutes. And the evening, I try to figure out some 45 minutes late evening, like probably somewhere 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock. I'll try to use that time. So please try to invest at least 30 minutes, if not 1.5 hours per day, because you might be having some household works or household works. So you have to take care of your kids. A lot of things are there. But in spite of all those journey, we have to spend some time. If we are not ready to spend some time, then obviously the growth is going to be stopped. So please do ensure that you spend some time every day, 30 minutes, and you calculate when you come on next Saturday, you would have almost worked for 2.5 hours within that time gap. Per day, 30 minutes, and you have 5 days, right? So 2.5 hours of practice or learning can really help you to catch up what's I'm going to do on the next week. But if you fail to do that, then it'll be little difficult to follow up what's going to happen in the next week. So try to meddle with that. You will be having a lot of challenges in setting up the Maven. So try to figure out that problem. So for all those things or for all those workout, you have to spend some time. You either spend it in the morning or in the evening, that's up to your choice, or in the mid-afternoon, it's up to your choice. But please do spend some time per day. It's a personal advice. I'll stop here. I guess we have crossed the time. It's 8:02. So have a great practice. I'll try to throw more information on the group, and stay safe, stay in and stay safe, and have a great week. And we'll catch up on next Saturday. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you,
sir.
sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks.
Welcome. Thanks.